Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Perfection Unfolding with me, Cara G. I'm leaning into the microphone, so if you're watching on YouTube, we have one mic this morning, and when I say we, I am kicking off season 2 with a very special guest. The one, the only, light of my life, joy of my heart, silly goose extraordinaire, the one and only Sue Shanks Campbell. Give a round of applause for Sue.
Yay! AKA
my mother.
Mom.
My mommy. Okay, so today is a special day because when people are listening to this, it is Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday.
Which is also your birthday.
It is my birthday.
420, toke it up.
I do.
You do toke it up?
No, I did not.
I did not inhale. No,
I didn't.
So my mom is 420 baby, and that was before it was tokenized as the Mary Jane holiday.
You know who else has a 420 birthday?
Hitler.
Hitler.
Yeah, that's a fun fact for the
fun fact.
Y'all didn't know this is a history podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just want to say it's good to be back. It's good to be back. It's Easter Sunday. I thought that launching the season 2 of this podcast was like, metaphorically, it's Easter. It's the resurrection of Jesus. It's the resurrection of my podcast. Am I comparing myself to Jesus? No. But if you made that correlation, that's not on me. Do you know what I'm saying? And I wanted to start the season off with an interview because all last season I did solo podcasts. As a listener, you know I could talk and talk and talk by myself for hours. But
I listened to all of them.
My mom is my number one fan. I know you have a lot of competition out there, but you were the OG. You have been here since the beginning. And I just wanted to, in this new season of life, like have candid conversations and also kind of be an example of what it's like to have interesting conversations with people that you're close to. I mean, I think we have a relationship that is unordinary, but also ordinary at the same time. I think we're very lucky. How would you describe our relationship?
I would think lucky is a good one. I don't think that it's unordinary. There are a lot of mother-daughter relationships that are, very close. And I think I'm very happy that I have one of those for sure, because there's a lot of them out there that don't have those kind of relationships. And, and people very close to us. And, you try to say, well, that's your mom. And they're like, no,
They're like,
I do not have to have her in my life. And I have to step back and go, you're right. You don't. Because if they're not a good person, just because they're moms doesn't mean they're good people.
Yeah.
And just because they're this or that or the other doesn't mean they're a good person. Just because they're a pastor, just because they're in the military, just because they're whatever doesn't mean they're good people.
Yeah.
So you have to always have to take a step back and remember that, because
this is a very, very special situation, I would say.
Yeah. So
because you can raise your kids your whole life and they could still hate you.
Right.
You could be the best mom in the universe and something could still happen where they're like, I don't know you. I don't like you,
Yeah.
Especially
maybe from their choices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are a boomer, so you guys get a bad rap. My mom is a boomer. Loud and proud. She's technically...
I think missed it by like 6 months.
No, you're the last year on the totem pole. I mean, I'll let you... I don't know if you want to give away your age, but yeah, it's just a number to me.
It's my birthday.
How old are you?
I'll be 62. I'll be Social Security age.
You were the geriatric pregnancy mom, technically.
I was.
But I think that's... Well, we can get into that later, but I think that's bullshit. I'm like, how are you going to scare me into not having kids? That's crazy. But before we get into all that, I just wanted to kind of give people a, yes, you're my mother, but you're also a person, right? So I want to kind of give people a well-rounded view of kind of like what you've done in these last 60 years, 60 plus years. I know you don't like to brag on yourself, but I'll start. I will just say my mom is a lifelong musician. Okay. She's a singer. She's a flute player. She dabbled in piano when she was a kid, even though she would never give herself credit for that.
Switched to baritone. Loved every second of it.
She was a baritone player in college. First year baritone, like literally 1 year in, and she just picked it up. Yeah. So your whole side of the family, musicians, artistic. You're both your parents, my granddad, and your mom, aka my grandma, who I never met. We'll get into that. They were both music teachers, is that correct?
Yeah, my mom was a music major and my dad was a music major. He became a band director, and my mom taught music in junior high. She was never like a choir director or that kind of thing, but she taught like the general ed music for her whole career. So,
which I would say
and she was a piano player, very, very good piano player and baritone player.
Yeah. So your mom was the piano player, baritone player. Your dad he's like, granddad plays like every single instrument.
Every instrument. Right. He is a what do you call it? Musical mechanic is what he calls himself.
Yeah.
Because he can sight read anything flawlessly, with vocally and instrumentally. But he doesn't like ad lib or do that kind of thing. He can play jazz if it's written out, but he can't do the ad libs and things like that. So he goes on very, very mechanically perfect.
Which makes me laugh because that is such a Shanks thing to say. Okay, my family has this wound where they don't call themselves artists. We're just good at things for no particular reason. Yeah. So then you grew up with this house full of music. Your siblings played instruments, minus one of them, I think, Kelly.
I play trumpet.
Oh, you play trumpet, yeah. So family full of musicians, and then you went on after college. You were like, I don't really know what to do with my degree. Your brother invites you on tour. Then you're in this hair band, this 80s cover band, top 40 hair band, when there were no DJs in clubs. It was just live music, and you guys kind of like took over the Florida scene. Like, tell me a little bit about that. What was that like?
We did. We did play all over, but we kind of in the later years, we just kind of ended up playing a lot of Florida. Now our agent was in Florida, so he had a lot more connections there. So yeah, we ended up playing a lot in Florida. We ended up getting a Jammy Award for all of the because there's so much live music back then.
Okay, but what is a Jammy Award? Because I need people to understand how cool the situation is.
It's a local Grammy Award, so it's for music, and for the bands that are playing, whether you're playing your own music or someone else's music, it didn't matter. For all of the circuit bands that are going around for Florida, so it's just.
Which is not a small state. It's not a small state. So you say local. We're not talking about like a local talent show. We're talking about like the state of Florida has this competition.
Right.
Got it.
And our band won Best Band of Florida and they call them the Jammy Awards instead of Grammys. So, but it's just for bands.
And what were some of your like kind of cool highlights from that time that you can think back on? Standout moments.
Oh gosh. Playing in Baltimore, that was fun. I think we followed Taylor Dane, and she was really big at the time. Playing in for New Year's Eves, we played in Snowshoe and Snowmass, Colorado, Virginia, and one we played right there in Houston at the Adams Mark. I think that was our first New Year's Eve.
I don't know what the Adams Mark is.
It's a big hotel, or it was. I don't even know if it's still there. It was a big, beautiful hotel in Houston, and that was our one of our first gigs. Actually, was New Year's Eve, and again, big hair, and we were just kind of starting out. So but it was great, and you get paid so much more, for New Year's Eves. So that was always fun. So those are big crowds. So you always know you're going to have a full house, and everybody's jamming and just partying and having a good time.
And I remember you telling me this. I don't know if the story is correct, but this is how I remember it. I remember you telling me that when E! News started, you guys were one of the first interviews. Is that correct?
Yes, we were in Orlando, and it was. And honestly, I'm not real sure if it aired because we didn't have access to all the TV. That's before internet.
Back then, you're like, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that happened. Yeah. But yeah, we were one of the first interviews recorded for Television News. Yeah, and
like
first day,
day one, they were like these guys.
Right. I think we had just won the Jammy Award in Florida, so that was a thing. That's cool. Yeah, that was a little claim to fame.
Also, you guys, my mom got a smoke show. Listen, and I need to paint the picture too. Like growing up, like seeing. Okay, first of all, if you're my friend and you know me, you know my mom, like. Like how cool those pictures are, like in the house, like with the bustiers and the leather and the big hair and the hairspray and like the videos.
Still have some.
Oh yeah, the hair. Listen, if I know one thing about boomers, y'all love your hair.
We love that.
You love to keep the hair the exact same. I mean,
it's toned down.
But it's good. It's curly. This is a natural curl. It's not a perm.
Natural, yeah. I definitely had the spiral perms.
Yes, sure. And you know me, like my hair's super long. If I had a perm, it'd be like crazy. So, but yeah, like I just remember growing up thinking like how fabulous, so jealous. And you do that for about 9 or 10 years.
About
8 years.
About 8 years. Yeah.
Then you get married. You meet Dad. You
on the road.
You and Dad. I love that story. We won't get into it now, but basically my parents met in a club. So for all you people who don't believe in meeting in real life, IRL, it works. It works. It does. I mean, then you went on to, like, eventually you became an elementary music teacher, and then doing that for a little bit, which you were like, I remember growing up, you would do these productions and these plays, and it would just like blow parents' minds how much that their kids could do, right? Because a lot of times, listen, I got a lot of friends whose kids are in school. I got a lot of friends who are teachers themselves, and it just seems like the things you can teach kids nowadays, or at least what people expect from kids, is just the bar's getting lower and lower for a multitude of reasons. But like, it just seemed like when you would put these productions on, it was like lights, camera, action, props. There was sign language. There was like air guitars, you know? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, my very first program as a music teacher in the public schools, my brothers were still playing. They were still gigging. So they were still in it, and they still had all the lights and the sound systems and stuff. All I had was a stage. And it was a good stage, but no curtain, no anything. So the very first thing I did was I asked my brothers if I could borrow some lights and a little bit of sound. And they came, and my oldest brother, Sydney, he came and he did the light show. So we had the moving light, the smoke machine, everything. And I think the opening scene, you mentioned air guitar, was, my little third grader sliding across the stage on his knees, playing his, well, it wasn't an air guitar, but it was a plastic guitar, right? Just to open up the show, and the fog was following him in, and look out, and the parents' jaws were just on the floor, and all the teachers' jaws were on there. They'd never seen anything like that, especially in an elementary school with the moving lights and the sound system and everything. So that kind of set the stage for the rest of it was a short career in that, about 4 years.
But impactful. Impactful.
So after that, I was able to get a curtain, I got a sound system, I got a lighting system, and all of the things that I needed to continue doing those kinds of shows. And one thing I'm very proud of is I never let any kids, especially any that wanted to do it, every kid had a part. Every single kid, unless they were, and I think it only happened once or twice, 1 or 2 kids maybe in that whole time that just couldn't do, their stage fright was so great that they couldn't go out front. And I didn't make them. I'm not going to scar someone, for life, because they, I'm here. You're going to be out in front of all these people.
Do it.
But they would be in the crowd. They would still be singing the songs and doing the movements and stuff. And I just loved every minute of it. It was the best gig ever. Best gig I ever had. Loved it. And then I got to teach a little bit of art in my last 2 years, so that was great, because too much of anything can be too much, and art enabled me to break up the day and break up the year by doing not just the same music, every year, and break it up with some art too, which was wonderful. So good school. Shout out to Martin Walker.
Martin Walker. That's where I went to elementary school, and that's where I was an old lady in the Christmas play, and I sang "One Special Cookie."
Before I was a music
Before my mom was a music teacher, and my granny, your stepmother technically made my costume. So I just wanted to kind of paint a picture of like the highlights of your life, because I think it's important to give you your flowers, while you're still here. And then also, like, that's kind of the outside point of view. That's kind of the outside perspective. Like, I think you and I have had many conversations, and we'll get into kind of how our relationship has developed, but many conversations about like, on the outside looking in, this is really cool, and I'm like doing all these things, and like people look up to me, and I'm like, you were like literally on stage as this like sex icon for years, whether you want to admit that or not, but you were.
Oh, everybody loves adoration.
Yes.
So did I.
Oh yeah, girl. I'm a words of affirmation. Oh, you want to hype me up? You go right ahead. And as you can see, the apple doesn't fall far. But so it's like, that's the highlights, but like what was really going on behind the scenes, I want to kind of get into that, because you and I have talked about how we have the shared experience of like, we call it the melancholy. And I don't even know if I even plan to go here in this interview, but I want to talk about it because it's a lived experience and you and I are from two totally different generations experiencing very similar realities. So, and I think that that's important, especially like I have this idea about how people have been the exact same forever.
Yeah.
Like I think back to like biblical times, people were cracking jokes, people were making memes, people were struggling romantically, people were dying of like lots of different diseases. But
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, the parallels are the same nowadays. Like we have had the same struggles forever as people on the earth. And I want to kind of get into that. Like I specifically want to talk about like you in your 20s because obviously like that's my demographic, so that's what we care about here. Because I know what I've been through, and I want to kind of hear what was happening behind the scenes when you were. And I know we've talked about this, but like for the people out there listening, like you're on stage, you're doing all this stuff, you look so cool on paper, but like what's actually going on behind the scenes in the background? Like, how are you feeling? What are you dealing with? Like, what's going on familially? You know, like.
Well, I had two of my brothers and myself were in this band. And they're older than I am. So I'm still the little sister. Doesn't matter how old you get, you're always the little sister in your family dynamic. But honestly, when people see you on stage and all your sparkle and your glitter and your big hair and, you do spend a lot of money on your clothing, they think you're making tons of money, right? Sure. They just think you're so rich. I was making $300 a week. That was it. Now in 1989, but that's no mortgage. I did have a car note. But so all of that being said, it was just there. You don't have a lot of disposable money because you're in your hotel room. I was the only girl traveling with 7 guys, so most of the time I had my own room. And if I didn't have my own room, I shared it with my brother. But so what you're asking, what was behind the scenes, there was a lot of loneliness, a lot of loneliness for me because I was the only girl. And being a woman and a woman in her 20s who's, kind of cute,
A little bit.
And you're in different towns every other week and you're meeting new people, I wouldn't just go with the guy and, oh, let's go do this. You don't do that because you're afraid of men, in general. Meanwhile, all the guys, the girls are going, let's go do this. And they're like, sure, let's go. So they were all always busy and always doing things and being invited places. Now I also got invited places and we got invited places as a group, which was a lot of fun, but it was a lot. But yeah, I was lonely a lot of the time and that would cause that melancholy and just be kind of down. And then you get up and be on stage and you're up,
and you
up,
perform
6 nights a week. For 6 weeks at a time, and then we'd take a week off. But it was 6 weeks, 6 days a week, six weeks at a time, take a week off. And I didn't have a home to go to, so I'd either go back to my parents' house, to a friend's house, or to my brother's house, so I didn't have a home for like 8 years. Like technically I was homeless.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean,
and everything I owned fit in my car.
Yeah.
Everything I owned fit in my car. So, including my bicycle, I lived out of 2 suitcases, bicycle, and anything I could shove in there.
And how did that like what was like the vision you had for yourself, and how did that like compare to the reality that you were experiencing?
Well, the vision was we would break into mainstream music. And I would have servants.
Okay.
Not servants.
No,
but,
yeah.
Assistants and,
But you'd have money.
I would have money. We would all have money. And I'm not a planner. I'm very much just tell me when to show up and I will show up and do my thing. I don't like the planning part of it. I don't like the, all that behind the scenes stuff. Just tell me what song I'm singing. And I will show up and tell me, So I thought I was going to live in a luscious house, have this assistant that just told me where I needed to be, and I would just be taken there.
Doesn't that sound nice?
That's how I envisioned my life.
We want to be saved.
Yeah.
Listen, I struggle with that.
But listen, I have no complaints with how my life turned out. So everybody has a few, but the overall umbrella of it is never thought I would be where I'm at. never thought I would live in the house that I live in, so, or have the experiences that I got to experience by, after the band days and the life that I chose. So it all worked out.
Yeah. Well, and I know you've had conversations with me about how during this time your mother passed, right?
Yes.
You said you were about 25 years old.
Yes.
She was very young. She was what, 55?
55.
55. And how that was kind of like a turning point. And so like this whole podcast is called Perfection Unfolding, right? And a lot of times we can only really see the perfection of our lives, the divine timing, the everything in hindsight. But how did your life change at that point? Like, what do you remember from that time in that capacity? How does it differ before and then after?
Well, going back before high school, I had a high school boyfriend. I had a college boyfriend for 3 years. I had, I was proposed to a couple of times before the band thing.
She was proposed to a couple of times, you guys. Bro, I can't even get a guy to open up to me about his past, and this woman be proposed to before the age of 25 several times. Girl, I'm trying to tell you guys, sex symbol. Come on.
Well, wait, what was the question?
You've had partners, you had consistent boyfriends leading up to your mom's passing.
Oh, mom passing. That's what it was. Right. So at 25, when my mom passed, there was definitely. Oh, well, I was going to say before that, no thoughts of marriage. Couldn't even comprehend it. Couldn't wrap my head around it. I always knew I wanted kids, but marriage was like, no, I'm 20. I'm 18. No, I'm 22. No, no, it wasn't even there yet. 25, mom passed, and probably even maybe even before she passed, 25, it clicked. I said, I want a home, I want a family, I want a husband, I want the white picket fence, I want the story. I want the storyline. And so immediately after my mom passed, I met someone. We got engaged in 3 months and bought a wedding dress, bought the whole shebang, was all in. And at 6-month mark, I was like, oh, hell no. So there is something to be said when you lose someone that you're that close to, that is that important into your life. It is a primal thing to procreate. I'm not kidding. It is primal, and it is, you feel like you have to do that when there's a death, when there's someone that you lose like that. It's really weird. It plays with you a little bit.
Where do you think that comes from?
Like I said, I think it's just primal. It's just we lost someone. We need to get started in replacing, the human race, apparently. So so some things happen after my mom died that I won't talk about, but
what do you mean something?
Like I said, it's primal. You
gotta
go have sex.
For the kids at home who've never heard of sex before. Basically, mom got a little wild hair. You said, I'm going to find my man.
Right.
And I'm going to scout him out.
Well, I wouldn't find anybody. I was finding someone. So
it's safe to say you were trying to fill a void.
I was, definitely. Gotcha. You definitely want to fill that void.
And what was like, I mean, I can use my imagination of like just trying to seek comfort in any capacity,
right?
Right. You didn't have any friends on the road outside your brothers, really. I mean, you didn't really have anyone to turn to. So it's like, now you're in these cities, because this was about halfway through your whole the gig years, right?
Right.
So I mean, like, you're like, hey, you think I'm cute? All right, let's go party.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that experience turned out so sour, bad. I mean, bad.
Yeah.
And I'm glad
with the fiance.
With the fiance, the immediate fiance after my mom's passing. So that was just horrible. But yeah, but I'm glad that got cut off when it did, and that we didn't go through with anything.
If you can think back, like, what was the thing that you were like, nah, like, what was because as a woman,
that's getting really, I mean,
I think a lot of us, especially people like me, people like you, like, I'm a hopeless romantic and I'm a ride or die. So it's like, if I choose you and I decide that you're special, that's it. But it takes something, I've realized it takes, like, I have to lose respect for you to, like, let go of you.
Well, and for me, because I am an over people pleaser and I want everyone to like me, it takes a lot for you to get rid of me.
Yeah.
And listen, looking back, number one, I'm not sure he was a gay, because he only liked one thing in bed, and we know what that is.
Yeah.
He gave me a venereal disease, which was curable.
We've been there. Listen, it happens. Listen, normalize STDs. I mean, don't normalize it, but I'm just saying, like, it happens way more often than people care to admit. And there's no shame behind it. Get it taken care of.
Right.
Deal with it. You made your choice.
He was working in a strip club, and he obviously maybe he's overcompensating for him probably being gay.
Yeah.
So he's, sleeping with other girls and stuff. And I'm like,
people have their traumas.
And, and the sad thing is that when I broke up with him, it was because I had reached my limit and I went out and found someone else. Just a one night. I said, when you make me feel like this is what I have to do, oh yeah, it's over. I mean, it was probably retaliatory, but yeah.
Reactionary.
So went in that day and took out all my stuff and put it in storage and, and he tried to keep some stuff. He goes, well, 98%, that stupid thing that people like to say, 98% of the law is whatever that is.
Yeah.
I was like, no, it's not. You're an idiot. I'm taking my stuff.
Yeah.
And got out and did not regret it at all. He showed up at some of the clubs we were playing at after that. It was just weird, but good looking guy. He was a cutie.
But dodged a bullet.
Mm-hmm. And I found out he was a mama's boy. I mean, I went home to meet his parents, and his mom was coming in his room without knocking while we were in there, and to get his underwear that he left on the floor. I'm like, it's there for a reason. Why are you in our room?
And why are you in the room when I'm naked?
And bring it back, an hour later after it's been washed and folded, that was like a
big ick.
Yeah, big ick, red flags everywhere. Yeah. And I was just not looking, I just didn't care to see him, so, that went by the wayside.
And you were like, still not fulfilled this dream that I have of motherhood and partnership. And
no.
And then...
And I've told you, when my mom was alive, I said, if I reach 28 and I don't have a man, I'm going to have kids anywhere. And she was mortified. She's like, oh, no, don't say that. Don't say that. Well, now, after that 25, year mark, now it's a couple of years later, and there's still nobody. But you said, I was engaged and I wasn't engaged. I was proposed to a couple of times, but I couldn't buy a date when I was on the road, hardly. So when someone did connect, I was like, oh, let me latch onto that. I couldn't buy a date. Nobody would ask me out. And everybody goes, oh, everybody's so intimidated. And I'm like,
which is so funny because you know better than anybody that was my experience, is my experience. But what's so funny about that, and I think now that I look back and I think about it, I had this revelation talking to Preja the other day. I used to feel so like on the outside of everything. And I still have that experience sometimes with men, with women, like
same.
You and I have this shared experience of just feeling like we are on the outside of everything. Like, there's this like glass between us and them. And sometimes I connect, and like most of the time, and like we can chit chat with anybody. You know what I mean? We are very friendly people. Like, we like to serve, we like to show up. But what I'm realizing in adulthood is like, I have this like unconscious discernment, and my ego is like, we're on the outside, but I think what it really is that's where I like to be. You know what I mean? I don't really like, not everybody's for me. And I think I flipped that script a couple years. I mean, I'm still working on it, obviously. Right. Work in progress. It's perfection unfolding. Same. It's unfolding in front of me, right?
It's always going to be unfolding because,
But it is the thing of like, at the same time, and this is me obviously putting myself in your shoes, like I would imagine at the same time that it's like everyone's out doing this thing with all these people and like they're meeting people, it's also like, but I like to be alone. But when I do find someone that I connect with, right? When you find someone that you connect with, that's when it's fun.
Right.
But I feel like we both have this wound of like, I want to be chosen. Like, I want to know that you choose me. But what's so funny is I feel like we're just so powerful that like, we actually choose exactly who's in our life. I mean, maybe that resonates with you, maybe it doesn't, but it's a perspective shift.
It is, right? Because the perspective for so long was, I'm jealous of these people who have these huge friend groups. They go on vacations together. There's like 16 of them. I'm like, how do you know that many people?
Because they're all swinging, and it's all a facade. Right. Getting older is maturing that everyone wants to sleep with everyone, except for me.
And they're all like alcoholics,
right?
So they bond over being drunk all the time or something, So
which let's talk about that too, because as a young woman, I think, well, at least for me, my prudeness, I used to be so prude to protect myself, like verbally mean to men by like I remember being 15 and like men would like walk through the hall and be like, please meet my girlfriend. And I'm like, no, I'm a virgin. Leave me alone. Like that was very much so. I mean, that has a lot to do with like religious trauma, but I mean, just a little bit, un poquito. Like there was a lot of shame in the church. So and it was also like, if you are this girl who goes off and has sex, like that now you're gonna be this like pariah in society. So that's a different kind of topic. But something like
I hope I never put that on you because I don't feel like I ever.
No, you didn't. Yeah. And that's something I want to speak to. And we can kind of get into like the way that you parent too, just to kind of pivot a little bit of like, it was twofold. It's like, I used my prudeness. I never thought of myself as a prude, but I used my prudence as like this protection mechanism because the world is really scary. And like you spoke to it earlier, like men can be very scary. And it's like the discernment needs to be sharp before you start moving and grooving, or especially before you're ready. But what I know now is like, it's like my sovereignty. You know what I mean? Like I'm a sovereign being. And again, it's that I had this unconscious awareness that you taught me that at a very young age through your stories, talking about how you were this one person on stage and this other person when you got off. And I want you to kind of tell us about how that showed up specifically when you met Dad. Because my parents are still together. They're married. They're still together. They're best friends.
Yeah, we are.
Hardship, but best friends. And before we get into that, I will say this. The only difference between people who are together and people who are not is that you decide that you want to be. That's it. The hardship is the same. That's what I'm realizing as an adult. But anyway, speak to that. Speak to that like you're like a freak, a woman, a lady in the streets, but a freak in the bed.
Well, I think that's the same thing. I don't think you said that right. Angel in the morning. And Anyway, so, well, when we first met, it was, I mean, how much did you want to know?
Well, okay, maybe we don't have to get too much into it, but
so when we first met, we were together.
Yeah.
Instantly. And
that's the way that the Campbell ladies work.
Right. And we were together. And so basically I had to explain to him, because like you said, I wore bustiers, I wore spandex, my big hair, lots of makeup, eye makeup, red lips and all that kind of stuff. And it was a big presence, on the stage, and we're dancing around and we're,
your personality, right? You're sexy. You're getting all up in
there. So when we started getting intimate and really getting to know each other, I said, you have to know that is someone I play on stage and I love it. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I am that person too, but that stays on the stage. But at home, I'm very conservative. Mm. I grew up in a Christian family. I consider myself a Christian. a godly woman, however you want to say it. Mm-hmm. Not perfect and not prudish. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it.
I mean, let's be honest. I'm an adult now. I've had sex. We'll get into that later.
Some people can count them. Some people can't.
I'm a prude, maybe. Based off the example you've set. No, I'm kidding.
Anyway,
she's a lady, people. She's a lady.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just had to set maybe the first time I ever set a boundary. Maybe that was my first.
That was
boundary.
your first time.
My first one.
You're like, after all
the last one,
these terrible relationships, this is the man that is going to get the boundary.
Well, and I decided that I wasn't going to pull any punches with him. I said, I went through these stages of, I'm going to try to make you happy. I'm going to try to do whatever you need me to be and be whoever you want me to be. And with him, and the one that stuck was, no, there are people that I date. There are people that I go out with. We are not in a relationship. If you want to be with me, that's fine. But know that you're not it right now, blah, blah, blah.
I'm still feeling you out.
Yeah, I'm still checking. Yeah. And I said, and I will go to church on Sundays when I want to, and I won't go to church on Sundays when I don't want,
Preach.
And this is how it's going to be. And he was like, okay. I'm like, damn.
Every time.
It didn't scare him away. And I think, and maybe I was trying to. I wanted it. It was a push-pull. I wanted him, but I also didn't want to change who I was and have him think that I'm this person that's on the stage when that's not who I am. Really the other, 20 hours of the day. Yeah. That's not who I am. For 4 hours of the day, that's who I am.
Which is so funny because listening.
And don't be mad when people adore me because That's what I'm
That's
here for.
happening.
That's happening.
And it's so funny that you're saying it in this way, because for the first time I'm like putting two and two together. It's like you kind of became that stage personality in that moment, setting those boundaries in relationship. Which is interesting, the way that we see ourselves, because I'm like, you're like this big, like, I don't, like, you can't mess with me. I'm a performer on stage. And then when you get off stage, you're like, I'm a people pleaser, blah, blah, blah. But what you did with Dad in that moment is you kind of stepped into that.
Which is what I said. I am that person.
Yeah.
And that she's in me, obviously. I was, another person before Beyonce coined it, like, come on.
You guys, I don't want my mom to get canceled, but she has said, I was the white Beyonce before Beyonce.
I've never said that.
You kind of said it like that. But I will say, and you've told me this, it is true. People did not know what to do with you back in the day.
Yeah.
You had this soulful voice, you had this bodacious body, you had the performance, and they were just like 10 years too early. Sorry, kid.
Right.
But anyway. So that's funny. So you set your first boundary. This is like when you were 29?
Yeah, we met when I was 28.
28, 29. Yeah. So, and then you guys got married when you were 29. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're September before my 30th birthday.
Which is crazy because I'm 29. And it's just so interesting, like oh my God, like I cannot imagine getting married right now. But I mean, but it's funny because when I'm in a relationship, I can absolutely imagine it. But when I'm out of a relationship and I'm single, I'm just like, dude, I'm a child. Like, I'm a baby.
Right.
I'm just trying to go dancing and, like, I don't know, just hang out in the park and read books.
Right. But and that's one of the things I love so much about you, is that you have that independence and you have your own money, which is what I wish for every female out there, is have your own money so you never feel stuck.
Well, speak to that. Talk about that. The importance of that and how it's played out in your life.
The upside is your dad and I are still together.
Mm-hmm.
The downside is, had I had my own money, we would not be together.
Mm.
And I guess very early on. So, which is kind of a, we worked through it because I was trapped. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. I'm not really sure.
Well, I think that experience is something that, like, people, like women my age, people listening to this, like, it's that thing of, like, when to say when. Like, when is it too much? Because there's so much, and we can talk about this really quick.
Struggle with that.
There's so much in current day, like, social media philosophy, social media psychology, that speaks about boundaries. It speaks about sovereignty. It speaks about, like, it's not your job to teach a man how to treat you. It's not your job to this and that. And to that I say yes and.
Yeah. I mean,
yes and. Because and like, let's talk about that, because I know for me, like, my big thing and the different, like, what I've learned from you, I've learned a lot from you that I want to mimic, that I want to copy. I learned that, like, I don't need to just be going out with any old person, because you were very vocal with me about your experience, and, like, you were very honest with me in an appropriate way. My mom wasn't sitting here doing, like, the weird.
It was always age appropriate.
Yeah, my mom wasn't, like, naked in front of me. We didn't have a family bed. Not against a family bed. I'm just saying, like. But
I mean, my stories.
Your stories, like,
I would a tidbit, but they were always age appropriate. Yes. And then as you've gotten older, I've expounded on some things, which you probably were going.
Which, as you guys can tell, my mom and I are very open with each other. We have this special relationship. It's like there's a lot of trust here, and I think that was established really early on. But before we get into that, like, this experience as a woman specifically, like, nowadays we have money. Nowadays, we don't feel trapped. A lot of us, some of us still, yes. Mm-hmm. But, like, we have options. And, like, for me, it's so important, the choice of being in a relationship, the choice of being in love, or the choice of choosing love, right? Like, I don't ever want to be anywhere I don't want to be.
Right.
So if I am in a relationship, my partner knows I want to be there, all in, full stop. Because for me, to have that reciprocated means so much more than somebody people pleasing me and just doing what they think I want, or, like, sticking around for kids or for whatever. Like, that to me it misses the point. It sucks all of the specialness out of a relationship to a degree, obviously. Mm-hmm. When you're with somebody for as long as you've been, it's been what, 30 something years? 32 years. That's a long time. I realize that there's going to come a point where that's your family. Like, that's your family. You know what I mean? And it's like, you chose that person as your family, but you have a certain level of being known with them that like a little bit of the spark is going to fade away. However, what you come out the other side with, which is what I think you and dad have, is this like deep friendship.
Right.
It's like, if the world is ending, I want you on my zombie apocalypse team because you're my ride or die. I'm your ride or die. And like, we're going to ride and die. And
But together.
Right. And it's like, I know obviously your and dad's relationship because he's my father. So like, I have my own trauma from that man, and him and I have talked about that. So I would never speak about something that I haven't spoken with him about already.
Right.
Because that's something that I learned from both of you. You know, don't ever say anything you don't want the whole world to hear.
Whole world to know. Thank
AKA
you,
Mom. Thanks, Mom. That's a Winnie-ism.
Yeah.
Winnie is my mom's mom who passed. And so she's our guardian angel. She's love you, girl. But yeah, like speak to that experience of like when, like, again, perfection unfolding, right? Hindsight, it's like 2020, but like in the moment, when, like, we don't have to get too much into dad's business, but was it a similar experience that you had previously, like with that former fiance that made you want to leave? Or was it like, what was it like? When did you, like, if you did have the money that you're talking about, like what was the breaking point? And then how did you make it work when you stayed mentally? What was your philosophy? Like what got you through? What was the mantra, you know?
Okay. Well, you and I know what the breaking point, why I wanted to leave.
Yeah.
We won't get into that. There were obviously other reasons.
My father's not a perfect person.
Right.
But
right.
he's a man of integrity. Yes. That's one of his best qualities.
And you know, it's hard to say out loud. I've said it many times to pretty much anybody that would listen, but in this moment, it's kind of hard to say because when we moved back to Texas from Florida, my kids grew up in Florida. Most of them, we moved there when you were going into fourth grade, third grade?
I just turned 8.
We moved back to Texas because my husband had gotten back into the military full time, and he was going over. That was after 9/11. And whether he remembers this or not, I don't know, but our conversation was, because I'd found out some other things that were still going on that should not have been going on.
Yeah.
I said, when I get here, and this is when I got my teaching certification, I said, when I get to Texas, I said that I'll move one more time. That's back to Texas. And so he made that happen. I said, when we get there, I'm going to make sure that I can be self-sufficient because I hadn't worked. So I've been having kids. And I mean, I worked, but I wasn't making enough money to sustain 3 kids. I said I would go back to Texas, get my teaching certification, get a job. And when I know that I can maintain myself and the kids, I'll let you know if I'm staying. And 8 years later, he's been gone. He was gone for 8 years. We saw him 4 weeks a year, right? So what did I have to complain about? You know, we weren't there. He came home for 4 weeks, and in those 4 weeks every year, I mean, we had our moments just in the 4 weeks that we were together. So I'm living my life. He's working and giving me everything that I needed and wanted with the jobs that he had over there. And so when he came back, we were in Maryland. We were already in Maryland. You were already a junior in high school.
I had grown up. Yeah, all of us had grown up.
All of us. Now he was coming home to, you know, young adults and a 6th grader who's going to go through those moody changes. And that's what he's coming home to and to live with us full time for the first time in 8 years. So that's when we went to the counseling, and when he said, you know, I don't know if this is going to work, I went, whoa. This is not the conversation we are having. We're having the conversation. I don't know if it's going to work or not. But anyway, we sat out in front of the counselor's office for an hour and boohooed and cried. And basically that is when we decided to stay together. 8 years after, actually more than that, like 12 years after, you know, that I said, I'm here. I think I've proven that I'm not going to steal from you. I'm not going to cheat on you. I'm not going to do any of this. You know, I'm not going to, you know, whatever it is that some wives do when their husbands are gone for ungodly amounts of time. I said, and if you want to grow old with me, if you want to grow old with me, that I'm here for it. If you don't, if you can't look at me when I'm 60 years old and think I'm beautiful, because I wasn't 60 back then, or 80, and you don't think I'm the prettiest girl in the room, then cut me loose now.
And what did he say?
And he said, well, we're here. I don't know exactly what he said. Maybe he didn't say anything. Maybe he just kind of kept going, through the motions of being together. And even now, I mean, and it's to the point where, we kind of joke about, he jokes about it like, well, I can't trade you in now. I've trained you too hard, right? Like, oh yeah, that's how that works.
Oh, men and their terrible jokes.
Right. But
why do we fall for it every time? We never learn.
Yeah. But I will say this about your dad, and I've told you many times, I said, when we have our talks, and it takes a lot for me to get there to where I feel like I've had enough of whatever we're going through and I'm done, we're going to sit down and have a, come to Jesus meeting.
Yeah.
And I will say this about your dad. When he listens, he listens. It's not going in one ear and out the other. And he listens to what I'm saying. And he says, this is what we need to do. And we're going to do this. And we will do it. And it'll fall off a little bit. And then we'll come back to it. And, how that goes throughout, decades of being married. But I will say he's not one to just, sit down and be quiet and just sit there and look pretty, whatever. He listens and he acts on it.
He cares.
That's the difference. He cares. He acts on what I've talked to him about. He acts on, us being closer as a couple. He wants us to do more things, and I'm the one who kind of goes,
I'm tired.
I don't want to go do that.
So yeah. The qualities. So something you've always said is that, dad's pros outweigh his cons, or just, and that's something to like look for in a man. So it's like the qualities in dad that are the pros, would you say outweighed the pros of like every other relationship you've had?
Well, I mean, I didn't have a lot of other really long-term, but I'd say when my mom, we'll talk about this, made me in college write down everything I wanted in a man, everything I wanted in a partner. And she made me write down every detail down to the color of his eyes and the color of his hair and what he does for a living or however much he makes or whatever, everything. He fit every single bill eventually. Now, when we married, he didn't make any money. I mean, when we got together, he was flat broke and didn't have a penny to his name.
You were the rock star.
But I was the rock star.
And he was your sugar baby.
He was my sugar baby. Yes. But I absolutely, and he made sure I saw it, the potential that he had. He never worried about money. He said, I can do anything. I can go anywhere and I can pick up a job at any time. And I trusted that he could do that. And he did do that many, 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 many times in our first 3 years of marriage. He picked up jobs one day at a time.
But that's not something that everyone can do.
Right. No.
Yeah.
And his abilities and his smarts, I could see that.
And ambition, I suppose. Yeah. Some men don't have ambition.
Yeah. And his wasn't big. He didn't have a big ambition. It was later, much later, probably 10 years in to our marriage because he always said, I'm a hands-on guy. I'm a, I just like to do it.
A worker bee.
I'm not a suit and tie guy, right? I'm a worker bee. And I was telling them to apply for, management because I'm not a manager. I'm not a suit and tie guy. I said, you absolutely are. You come home every single day telling me how things could be working better, how the manager didn't do this or the manager didn't that, and he should be doing this, that, and the other. You tell me that every day. I said, what do you mean you're not management material? Yeah. And he looked at me and he went, and you could see the light bulb. I've given him many light bulb moments over our marriage. And you could just see the wheels turning. And he went, yeah, you're absolutely right. And he went out and got the best job he's ever had. And we've been, living high on the hog ever since. Yeah.
Well, that's the power of having a woman in your life to literally speak life into you.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, and I want to pivot from dad for a second, and I want to talk about how you spoke life into me as a child.
Well, you might have to tell me that. I'm not sure I know.
So I want to kind of get into like your parenting style a little bit because I don't know. I think nothing comes from nothing and everything comes from everything. And I didn't just pop out your coochie like this. You know what I mean? And like you had mentioned earlier that dad was gone for those 8 years, and those 8 years were like formative years, formative years for me. I think, when I was very young, there's the joke that I would like play by myself on the playground, and like parents, like teachers would call you and be like, "Hey, Cara's counting stumps again," which I would. Like, you think I have this big personality now? No, that personality, like, yes, it was inside of me the whole time because both sides of our family are like very big personalities.
Right.
However, it was like, it had to be like, conjured out like by having life spoken to me. And like, I just remember being, and you probably have a recollection of this, like when I really began to trust you. Like, I mean, of course, when I was a kid, you put me in recitals, so like I was being praised. I'm a middle child, so like I fall into every single stereotype that exists. Like, I'm gonna work for my praise. Meaning I was in t-ball and I was in dance and I was in the theater and I was in volleyball. I tried everything. And the highlight of that is that you let me try everything. You let me taste the rainbow. You let me figure out and fall down and just like do it all. And the downside of that is that I was burnt out, and you let me do too many things. And when I should have been in bed at 9 o'clock, I went to bed at whatever. Yeah. But I think when I was I remember, talking about the sex thing and just trusting you. I remember being, I remember like the first time I really knew I could trust you. I think I was like 12 or something. And I asked you a question, and I don't remember exactly what the situation is, because the one that comes to my mind is the one I'm about to talk about next. Yeah. It might've been about periods or something. And I just remember, like, I think back to it, just the way that you would, like you said, you would listen. Like, you would listen to me, not as if I was a child, but as if I was just a person. And you would answer me with such curiosity. You would be like, well, yeah, like, let me think about it. Like, what's, you know what I mean? Like, well, you know what I mean? And it was never, the shame that I felt as a child never came from you, ever. The shame I felt as a child, it came from dad, because my dad was a yeller. That's, one of his downfalls. He knows it. He's a hothead. He's the first person to tell you. And that, as a sensitive little being, that like had a big effect on me as a child. But like, the difference between you and dad is like, I would come to you with like a problem, and you would just listen, and you would give me grace, and you would be like, you'd be curious because you were so empathetic, like, which is a stereotype for mothers, but like, in a lot of ways, you're kind of the ideal mother. Like, you are a very nurturing person. And you talked earlier about not everybody has the luxury of having a mothering mother. Yeah. And like, I don't think, this might be controversial, but I don't think you have to have children to have a mother presence. You know what I mean? Like, right. You either care or you don't, yeah. And care is like a big piece of mothering. Like, you have to care, you have to empathize, you have to humanize, right? And you did that. And one of the big things, and I know this one makes both of us laugh every time, and this is like the story. If I can memorialize this story on the internet, this is the one I want to pick. I was 15 years old, and this just speaks to everything I just said. I was 15 years old, and at the time, like, my best friend Prasia, sorry girl, her and some other people that I was friends with were experimenting with weed, right? Mm. And I was a little scaredy cat. Oh, there's a baby in the room, so we might have to take a break in a second, but I'll get through this quickly, and then we can pause for a sec. But I was 15 years old, and my friends were experimenting with weed, and I was a little scaredy cat. And so at this point, we had built such a relationship, and we'd had, several conversations about just stupid stuff or like important stuff, where I knew I could come to you and I could ask you questions. Mm-hmm. And this question, I was particularly like, I don't know if I can ask this one. This feels a little risky, but I did it anyway. And I came to you and I said, "Hey, Mom, so I'm really scared to smoke weed. Like, will you smoke with me for the first time? Because I don't know if I trust my friends." Like, not that I didn't trust my friends, but like, it was just an experience. I like didn't know what was going to happen. So I didn't want to risk doing it outside of the supervision of the person I trust the most, right? Which was you. And what did you say to me?
After thinking about it, because I put you off for a minute, for a day, I think, wasn't it? Like,
you said to me, and I quote, "Let me think about it."
Let me think about it. I did say, let me think about it, because I think y'all had asked me before if I had ever smoked weed. And honestly, I said, yeah, in college I did a little bit. And I think that's probably why you and Kyle, your brother, both were willing to come talk to me about it, I guess, I'm assuming. But I did think about it, and I did think about it hard. And
what was that? Like, your kid comes to you and asks you, because you didn't drink in the house. There was no alcohol growing up. There was no weed. There was no partying. My parents are very like sober for the most part. Like, you would have a margarita at dinner every once in a while, but like, it was not a part of the culture of our childhood.
Right.
So I come to you, I ask, can you smoke weed with me? Like, what the hell goes on in your mind as a parent? Like, how do you not be like, no, you know?
Well, as someone, because listen, my whole parenting style was to not be a hypocrite. I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I drank at 18. That's why I let you drink at 18, even though it was illegal. And you had said you're going to your friend's house and you're going to go drink. I'm like, as long as you stay in the house.
I never told you I was drinking. You just knew I was drinking.
No, you told me.
Oh.
You told me.
I don't remember that. I must have been drunk.
You tell me. Yeah, right. Tell me you messed up their bathroom. You know, you tell me.
But I was always after the fact.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But I knew. So the next time you asked to go there, I knew that's what was happening, and I just wanted you to be careful. And I didn't want to say, yeah. Now it was I say, not as I do. It was legal when I was 18. It's not legal now. But about the weed thing, it was really what was going through my mind was, I don't want her getting it from her friends because I don't know where that comes from. I'm not in a position to know who to ask to get the weed if I was going to go through with this, and just going through the whole circle of what you were asking, because it was a lot. There's a lot to it in my mind. And then I came back and I just decided that I wasn't going to do that. And do you want to say what I told you, or do you want me to say what I told you?
Go ahead, if you remember.
Well, I told you I wasn't willing to break the law for you. And
which, mind you, my experience of this, after you said, let me think about it, I didn't even need to do it anymore.
Right.
I remember being 15 and being like, that is the most badass answer. Like, I thought it just totally changed it didn't totally change my perspective of you, but like something flipped inside me where I was just like, oh, I can count on you. Like, you think of me as a person, not just as a child. Obviously you're my mother, but I was just like, that was just such a cool, like, I was so proud that you were my mom in that moment. And I think, like, I didn't ever really put that together till now, but I was just like, right, like, not every, like, that was just something that none of my friends had, no one I knew had that experience where their parent approached them with such like, I don't know, this is interesting. Let me think about it. Because it was just the fact that you were willing to consider my experience and validate that it was a genuine, earnest question. Like, I feel like that's overlooked. Because parents are just kids raising kids. The older I get, the more I understand that. But anyway, so continue. So at this point, it was like a week that had passed, and then you came to me and said, I'm not going to break.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's all I kind of remember of that story, was just me saying, I'm just not willing to break the law for you, and do that together. It's not something that I view as a bonding moment.
Right.
It's nothing that I want you to see at me as saying that it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it was at the time against the law. And
to that, I was like, makes sense.
Yeah.
I totally respect that.
And to me, that would be child abuse. No, it falls into so many other layers of things if I had said yes.
Yeah.
And I did not respect other students' parents who smoke weed with them. Yeah. I don't respect those parents. I mean, in that scenario.
Yeah.
And
you didn't want to be one of them.
I didn't want to be one. And that's why we don't drink in the house. We drink.
Yeah.
We don't oppose, people drinking or us drinking. But I didn't want it in the house, and be it, even though we had a little bit. But
which is, it's so funny to me because me as a teenager, and I'm sure you can obviously speak to this, even me as a kid, like I remember being a child, and if like you answered a question with because I said so, or if you met my questions with like, this is just the way it is, like no is the answer, sometimes no is the only answer, I would freak out. I would freak out because it didn't make sense. And it was like, obviously you can't really be logical with a child. Like, your whole job is to take care of them and keep them safe. But I remember being a teenager and just like scream crying when you would say no to me, because in my child brain, my teenager brain, I checked off every list of everything I had to do to make sure I could do what I wanted. And sometimes the answer was no. And what's so funny and crazy about that is that you said no like 0.00001% of the time.
Which is maybe why it was so hard to hear.
Which is why it was so hard to hear. And it makes me sound like such a brat because it's such a bratty thing, right? Like, but like at that age, I didn't have empathy until I did not see you as a human being. You were just my mom. I didn't see you as a human being until I was 17. And we had that infamous moment. This is like the only regret I have in my entire life. You know exactly what I'm talking about, is the time when my coach on my cheerleading team hated my guts because I was a person with a voice and with opinions who has my father's integrity.
Right.
And, you know,
and the talent to back it up.
Yes. I like you put my whole pussy into everything I did.
Right.
Curse word. But like when I did something, I did it full out, and I got punished for that because I had a leader, a coach on who was just looking back, a 23-year-old college kid, right?
Yeah.
But when you're 17, that's an adult. Like they're supposed to know what they're doing, and they're supposed to know what's right. And
teachers going into high school are only 21.
I know. But anyway, I had this coach who basically didn't appreciate like all the things I did for the team. You know, there was a death on the team. I was there to support. I did all this stuff. And like throughout the whole year, I just got like poo-pooed on. And there was the award ceremony, and it still pisses both of us off.
It does. I get mad about it every time I think about it.
My mom was a ride or die. Like that's my girl. But what had happened is I didn't get the award that I think
as a senior,
as the captain of this team, I didn't get the award that was deserved. Not that I think I deserved, but like I earned it.
Listen, the other little girl that got the award got it because she brought brownies that day. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Well, and it's like it's no shade to anybody else, but it was just a moment where it had happened multiple times where I'd have female teachers or female coaches. Like, listen, my coach and I had in Texas, wonderful, love that woman.
Yeah,
but it just several times throughout my childhood, I talked a lot. It could be very annoying. I have a big personality, and sometimes this just rubs people the wrong way. And it's when I was younger, I felt some type of way about it. As I got older, I'm like, yeah, I'm not for everyone. And you know what? The people who like me, people who don't. And this is a situation where I got overlooked, and it hit me in a really raw spot. And I remember,
and me too,
and you too. And I know, tell me what that was like for you.
I could not believe, after seeing everything that you did, having only been in that school for 2 years, and all the things that you did, you brought the team to win competitions.
We swept.
Yeah.
I taught them how to put lipstick on.
Right. She brought her dance history into this cheerleading group, of this little small town cheerleader group who had never won anything or done anything. And she brought them up. The coach did not. I mean, the coach did coach things, but you are really the reason why they raised to where they were.
Yeah.
And
which it wasn't anything crazy, but it was better than anything they'd ever done.
Anything that had ever been done before. You got to go small.
Yeah.
I mean, little steps, and you made a huge leap in that program. And to not be recognized, leaving your senior year, leaving, and she gave it to sophomore, junior, the cheerleader, whatever it was, year one. To not even be recognized, knowing that you're going off to college, and that those things like matter when you're going to college. Yeah. I was beside myself, and I didn't hold back with Cara, and she knew how mad I was I was literally stomping mad.
Which me too, but this was a situation where I'm the 17-year-old, right? Like this kind of like this heartbreaking thing happened to me. Like I felt betrayed by my team. I felt betrayed by my coach. And I did the thing that like most men do. And I just like wanted to suck it all in. I shut down. And it was a point where we were at the house, and you had brought it up, and you were voicing your concerns. You were voicing how upset you were. And I felt the exact same way, but like I did not have the capacity to receive that. I wasn't in a place to like share.
Either one of us could do about it.
No,
and it was just I was venting.
And as like an adult, I'm like, right, like I want to know that my people feel like understand where I'm coming from. But what happened in that moment is what could have been a point where like obviously I was a child, so like I did not have the emotional capacity that you had. But what could have been this moment where we're like, yeah, screw them, and like teamed up. I turned to you, and for the first time in my life that I can remember, the first time, like with like an adult kind of consciousness, I like looked at you and I said, "What, are you gonna cry about it?"
Mm-hmm.
And I have never in my life experienced instantaneous regret the way that I experienced in that moment, because I told you after, like I've told you now, like looking back, I'm like, that was a line I saw in a movie I always wanted to say. And that is the stupidest, most dramatic thing I've ever done.
Well, and what's funny, now my personality, under normal circumstances, I would have just shut up and walked away.
Yeah.
And that was the first time for me, honestly, as a parent, or even as a person, that I stood up for myself, honestly, if you want to know the truth. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I am crying about it because I'm hurt by it for you and by you, or whatever the conversation was. But like I said, 99% of the time, I would have just turned around and gone to my room and cried or whatever and done it alone. Yeah. But that was one of the first times that I said, yes, I am going to cry about it.
Like, and you said, and you're being a mean girl or something like that. Yeah. And I regret, like literally when I tell you nothing in my life, I regret nothing. Like I have processed so much. And you know what? It's like, I don't even regret that at this point.
Because I'm a person.
Yes.
And I have feelings.
Yes.
I am a person, I think is what I said.
You said, yeah, I think I am going to cry about it because I'm a person and you're being really mean.
Yeah.
And you said it just like that. And I remember being like, that was kind of like the first time that like I was ever kind of checked as an adult, or like as just you treating me like a person and me treating you like, me viewing you for the first time. It's like the veil of my mom kind of disappeared, and I was like, oh shit, I would never say this to a real person. And it was just so like, I think that like that was the moment I grew up. Like it was like, it wasn't the first time I had sex. It wasn't that. It was like the moment you looked at me in my eye and you were like, I'm a person. And I was like, too stunned to speak.
What?
Yeah. And it was just so crazy. And I remember you told me, like, I think when you were a kid, like you had a moment like that with your mom or something. Like, it's like the time she slapped you.
When she tried to spank me with a belt when I was 19 and home from college.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the opposite. It was like, you're not going to hurt me. I had that with Dad. I was like, are you done?
Right.
I'm literally 16. You're trying to spank me? Okay. Sure, I'll grab some real estate. And then he just went, right. And then I like went to my room, But yeah, I wanted to speak to that because I think it was like in the weed conversation. It was in that conversation where like these are like, the way you mothered was like all the little things, right? It was like you're showing up with presents, and you also fucking loved us, like, and like,
and still do,
and speak to that.
Tell people, even when y'all were small, toddlers and horrible junior high people, and as you grew up. I mean, there was never once when I wouldn't tell people, I like hanging out with my kids. I love hanging out with my kids. I didn't want to be that weird, goopy parent, like, let me hang out with you and your friends.
Yeah, you were trying to get with my boyfriend.
No, but I have always, even when y'all were small, enjoyed your company. I like the baby in the other room. I enjoy so much her brightness and light and personality and all of that stuff. And that was the same with all of y'all. And I think it's really interesting because you see these little memes. If you want to know how your mom was with you, watch her with your children, because that's how she, because I just love it. I love y'all.
Well, sometimes people are better with their grandkids than they are with their kids too.
Right.
Which is like, if you want to see how your parent could have wanted to be. Notice how they are with their grandkids.
But I was like that with y'all. And I think I was. I mean,
well, and where does that come from? Like, how? Because I mean, like something you always say, like when we have conversations about kids, you're like, people have been in wars forever. People are having babies in famine. They're having kids in recessions. They're having kids all the time. And like, I think, I mean, for millennials, like obviously economically, we're not in a good spot. Like we can't afford houses. We can't, like, inflation's crazy. But like, where do you think that comes from? Do you think that is an innate part of your personality? Do you think that you're doing that in response to the way you were raised? Like,
It's a little bit of both because, my mom was amazing too, salt of the earth. Her mom was salt of the earth. Um, but every woman has their issues,
Mhm.
right? And I regret because my mom, like you said, passed when I was 25. I really never got to have that because I was gone from 20 to 25. We were on the road, that I
Mhm.
never got to have that adult relationship with my mom, like you and I have been able to
Mhm.
have, and do I have to have the other ones? But
The other ones.
the other ones, Brady's just now 25, so
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
we're getting there,
Yeah.
and we'll love her being here. But so I never really had that adult relationship. I never got to hear the nitty gritty of her life, right? I
You never
never,
got to hear
I,
that she never
yeah,
did some
or that
things.
she did,
Or that she
or that
did.
she did. That's what I want to know, what she did
Yeah, we
do.
want to know if she was a lady in the street freaking the
So,
sheets.
yeah. So, and I regret that. So that kind of made me want to be, and mine and my mom, again, different generation.
Mm.
Mine and my mom's conversation about sex was, don't ever get on the pill because, don't ever do that. That was it. And she handed me a book, everything, the actual book, everything you wanted to know about sex, but we're afraid to ask. It is a book. And I never cracked it. I was too scared. I was too scared to even open it. Never even opened it.
Which
Never
is
looked at
funny
it.
because I lost my virginity and 10 hours later said, I got to get on the pill. I lost my virginity. And what did you say to me? You said, I thought you already did that. And I was like, you think I'm a whore?
I don't think we had that
No,
conversation.
you literally said, I thought you already did that. And I was like, Mother, you think I'm a salute? A salute? I'm in love.
No.
The way I lost it, not the classiest, but details aren't important.
Right.
We're not that close.
Okay. But getting ahead of the story, one of my favorite stories of you
Okay.
is, and it's not a big one. It's just
Okay.
when you went away to college and you had your high school boyfriend, right?
I'm nervous. I don't know.
And we were living in Maryland, and you came to Texas to go to school,
Mhm.
and you had that boyfriend. Y'all been dating whatever for a year,
Mhm.
and already knew about that. The whole thing that happened pretty early. But you called me up and said he invited me up to wherever he was, Huachuca or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're 18.
I just turned
Just
18.
turned 18. And you called me up and says, so you were asking my permission to go. And I thought it was the cutest thing ever. And I told you, you're 18. You can do whatever you want. If you have the money, you're 18. You're grown now and you can do whatever you want. And you're like,
Oh.
what?
I said, well, he's flying me out.
I know.
Yeah. That's
So,
so,
that was one of my favorite stories because you're
so
just
funny.
you were still asking my permission, and I would probably have done the same thing. I mean,
well, I just respected your opinion.
right,
And really,
should I go? Can I go?
it's been like that ever since, if I'm being honest. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, I make a lot of decisions by myself, obviously now, but it's like, if I gotta do taxes, when I bought my condo, which I'm a homeowner, the few, the proud, I mean, it's a condo. Do I really own it? But
Right.
like you are not like, and it's like that cliche of like, my mom's my best friend, but it's really true. I mean, like it's not just because you're my mom, and it's not just because like you're this person that I depend on because when I was a child, I thought you were God. But it's like, no, like you're a person who of sound mind, whom I have the evidence and I have the experience of you like bouncing ideas off of you, asking questions, and being met with a human response, being met with like just as much respect in return.
Mhm.
And I think that is the baby. That is like your genius, and that's what I want to really like. I want to drive it home, like in terms of like the way that you parented is like. I think a lot of people that I know are like going to be having their kids, and their kids are going to be getting older, and their kids are going to like, and maturing is realizing that your parents are just it's their first time doing this too.
Right.
And when I think about that too hard, it makes me really emotional because I'm like,
Yeah.
my mom is just a girl. And
and getting back to your question about how did you become the type of parent that you are, I don't think I answered that, but like my dad was the typical 50s dad where he went to work, came home, and he was outside, and he came in, he watched the news, and he went to bed.
Yeah.
He dragged us to the music things, like you will be in community band. That was our thing that we did together. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of conversations. He was that dad. We took us camping. I mean, we had a lot of time together, but he was doing his thing to be the dad.
Yeah.
You know, not intimate conversations of any kind.
Yeah.
And my mom, like I said, you know, the sex talk was just don't get on the pill. That was it.
Yeah.
Not a lot of intimate conversations either. So that is why I wanted to be honest and open as I could be. Again, age appropriate as you're coming up, with being honest and treating you like people and not like little kids, you know, and or treating or like when your dad was like, quit acting like a baby, and you know, Kyle was 3, you know, or 2 years old. No, treating them like they're 3 and treating them like, you know, but you know, never the baby talk, never the, you know, I didn't want to be a helicopter mom.
Yeah.
I'm always just hovering.
Yeah.
And when you came to me in junior high and said, my teacher's doing this, and you know, that was another story where it's like, well, how are you going to handle it?
Yeah.
Are you going to handle it? And do I need to go? Do I need to handle it?
Yeah.
Or can you do this and put yourself in the right spot and do what the teacher said or whatever, you know, kind of thing.
I think you balanced it really well. And something you say, which I find kind of funny, but also like so obnoxious, like, you're the product of lazy parenting. And I'm like, we gotta work on the self-esteem here. But it's like you did empower us, all of us, to make choice and to like deal with the consequences of that choice. And you know, I used to give you a hard time of like, you know, you're not as involved as the other parents, but like looking back, I'm like, I didn't want you there. Like I remember I have this very vivid memory of like going on a Girl Scout trip in 2nd grade, and you kept calling because like we needed jackets because it was colder than we thought it was going to be. Again, I'm remembering this as like a 7-year-old.
Right.
But
it was the other way around. Holly was calling me, going, "Can you go get jackets? Can you go get jackets?"
Right.
You know, like,
but I just
I'm going to my house.
Yes.
You know,
but I remember I'm like, Mom, I'm not gonna have anything to tell you about if you're just gonna keep showing up here. Like I want to have an experience so I can tell you all about it. And I'm still like that.
Right.
You know, but it's like either this or that. I'm either calling you every day and just like chit-chatting on the phone, or I go away for 3 weeks and you're like, what are you doing?
Where's the podcast? I know what happened.
I'm like, I want to tell you when I get back, you know. But I think we should wrap it up. But and you know, maybe we do a part 2 if this is what people want. But is there any advice you would give like to your younger self about sex, relationship, you know, philosophy, or to me? I mean,
no. See, that's a deep question I have to think about.
Yeah, that's fine.
To my younger self.
Yeah. Any words that you wish somebody had told you, or
the good experiences and bad experiences are all experiences, and you're going to learn from both. And you know, it's not all sunshine and roses all the time, and you have to have. It's like the yin and yang of life. You know, how do you appreciate this if you haven't experienced some of this over here? And I haven't had a lot of this over here, but it's enough to where I can appreciate, you know, every stage that I've gone through and where I'm at now, and that it'll work out as long as you stay true to yourself, and you know, which just sounds real cliche-ish, but you know, be a good person, remain a good person, and don't let people walk on you. I do let people walk on me sometimes, and still do to a certain extent, you know, until
you're like, I've had it,
and then, until I've had it, and then the foot comes down. Yeah, so sure.
Well, we have to wrap because there's a baby crying. We have a baby. But I love you so much. I think you're wonderful, and if we sit here too much longer and stare at each other, we're gonna cry. So I love you.
I love you.
Guys, that is a wrap on episode 1 of season 2. Technically episode 23. Baby's crying. We love it. We're people. We have lives. Tune in. I've got merch if you want to buy it. 101 Perfection Clothing.
Still waiting on mine.
We'll get you yours. But we will see you next week. Bye.